Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. I think that CCP is going back into testing mode at the moment. We did have a mass test this week, we're having another one next week, and of course there is a big winter patch coming with new structures, new ships, balance changes, so definitely sounds pretty interesting, and I do think that we can expect some CC action. When it comes to this EVE Talk, it looks like we'll have to do without Jita local. That seems to be broken at the moment. I tried saying something, but yeah, nothing pops up other than my own test comment. So yeah, CCP still does need to work on the chat system. Still seems to be some bugs in there. As always, we'll quickly start with a look at the new Eden store here. Nothing too special this week as far as I can tell. No major sales or anything like that. Obviously, the Headhunter skins are still front and center. They look pretty damn cool. And here a bundle that is very nice as well. Angel's Hex bundle that does look really amazing. The one thing that I would not go for would be the Hadean Horror bundle at the moment. Knowing that there's more Triglavian ships on the horizon, I would not purchase a bundle for only 3 ships. But alright, nothing too special, nothing on the 30-day Omega clone time either, which in my opinion is always the most interesting potential sale that you can get. And one thing to note though, there was a sale, was it like 25% off on Omega Game Time, I think, that I saw pass through in an email, so there will probably be an effect on a plex, which we'll check right away, of course. So let's get started with the market, and we'll start with plex at around 2 minutes. Like that, and let's go straight for the chart, where we can clearly see hesitation after we broke 3.25 million. Is still a slight uptrend on the 5-day moving average, and in Jita we're seeing plex being sold for 3,320,000 ISK. That's a couple of them. Most of them are actually going for close to 3.4 million ISK. Buyers in Jita up to 3.3 million almost as well. So that is very narrow between that first seller and buyer. We can expect that one to basically be gone pretty soon. If we go to the player-owned trade hubs though, that margin completely disappears, a little bit above 3.3 million for the sellers, and the buyers are hovering at the same range as the Jita purchase prices. So plex stalling a little bit, but no serious decline or anything like that to be seen. And there was a sale on Omega Time that I saw coming by on an email, but doesn't look like it's got a major impact just yet. At least the increase in price has stalled a little bit, and so here people have to decide what they want to do. Of course, if like that one viewer, you put all your ISK on this 2.8, 2.7 million purchase price, this is already a very nice profit. But personally, I do think that will go higher the closer we get to the winter release, and after that, that's I think where I'll look for a top, and I might actually unload some of my own plex. Skill extractors next. That one is continuing the increase, but also a little bit of a slowdown. Not as market a slowdown as the plex one. So I do think that there is an impact from the sale on demand for plex themselves. But that also, I think, is an indicator for me that that the general trend is going to be increased prices for plex as we get closer and closer to that winter release. So the skill extractors are currently selling for 373 million ISK, buyers coming in at 367. Again, really narrow margin here between sellers and buyers. And that on increased prices, I think, shows that we have some momentum. Next up, we have the skill, the multiple pilot training certificate. Almost forgot about that one. Very interesting seesaw motion here this year so far. You can clearly tell that considering these volumes, that CCP has done quite a few sales to bring us down to like 900 million ISK a couple of times, and then we spike up to 1.25 billion 1, 2, 3, 4 times so far, and this is the 4th one. Is this a sell opportunity? I again think it's too soon to pull the trigger on that. 1.2 billion, a bit above it for the sellers and a bit below that for the buyers. Again, really narrow margin in the Plex related stuff at the moment on these increased prices. I personally do think that we have momentum to go above 1.25 and that we will do so unless CCP comes out with even more sales. And of course, we do have Christmas, things like that coming decently soon. Those could be sale times as well. And then the choice that you have to make is if there is a spike before Christmas, do I sell then, or do I take the risk of going in actual winter, January, something like that, which historically, I think, last year, for instance, on the multiple pilot trading certificate didn't work out. You can see here a November spike. We'll take a quick look at the Plex prices themselves. Actually, a Christmas spike here. So it's always pretty difficult to time those peaks, and that time comes once a year, not several times a year. And this time the real question is going to be, when exactly is the winter patch coming out? How will that relate to possible sales at the end of the year? And then how will activity hold up in January? Where do you expect the Plex or the price spike to actually happen? I personally think that right around the launch of the winter patch, that is probably gonna be the best time. I wouldn't gamble on a January, February high personally, considering what we're seeing here last year. We still have the skill injectors, so let's go for the large skill injectors. 20-day moving average slowly going back up, but it's a very slow increase in price at the moment, selling for 711 million ISK almost. Buyers coming in at 700 million ISK. Again, that pretty damn narrow margin between sellers and buyers. For the small skill injectors, then we have a bit of a bump up. That is interesting. Potentially, I can see that you have a bigger backlog of cheaply created large scale injectors so that you have more stability for a longer period of time. But the small scale injectors do indicate that the bottom has been reached and that at some point we will go back up, because this one is starting to show more volatility and the trend is obviously up in price. 144 million for the sellers, 140 million for one buyer, 133 for the others. So a bit more margin opening up with that volatility on the small scale injectors. But overall, I do think that if you still want an investment right now, the large scale injectors, in my opinion, would be it. If you can purchase those for 700 million ISK or just below that, that would be absolutely great. And then just wait, you can see the potential. 800 million does exist for large scale injectors. And finally, we have the daily alpha injector here that is continuing to be really strong in price, pretty high in price at the moment. I'm personally a little bit surprised by that, but it looks like alpha players are still finding their way to the game, showing some strong demand for these daily alpha injectors. Currently selling for 61 million, buyers at 57 million. That's only a 4 million margin. Most of them definitely below 10%, which is pretty low if you count in taxes and things like that. It's not like you can grab a buy order, put it up for sale and get a profit or anything like that. Really narrow margin here on these strong high prices for a lot of these Plex related items. Are we at the high point yet? I personally don't think so. The winter patch is my horizon for that. Next up, we'll move on to the minerals at 825. There we go. And bad news, you may already have seen that from the ticker below. Titanium has known a slight resurgence back to 5 ISK last week. Looked really good, but it can't hold on to that. The volumes were just too strong, and we're heading for 4.5 ISK at this point. I think we can best take GTA itself. 457 now for the sellers, and look at that, 2 billion, almost 2 billion, another billion as the latest order coming in. Buyers are at 443 and 137 million, 200 million ISK units. Sorry, you're not going to have enough demand for that supply, and thus prices are under pressure, heading for 4.5 ISK, and in my opinion, way below average and too low to actually be actively selling that. I would stockpile my titanium at this point. Seeing titanium break though is bad news, I think, for most of the other minerals as well. Pyrite is continuing on that really low streak of 3.5 to 4 ISK, selling for 380. 3.8 around there, and the bars are very close to that as well. So this is basically a bit of motion between 3.5 and 4 ISK, and the bad news is 2 billion units here for 3.9, 2 billion units here for 3.79. So I do think that potentially we'll see more pressure on this one as well. Next up we have Mexalon. Continuing the bad news as well here, 1 year low point going below 60 ISK, very bad news for the miners, 61 for the sellers, 57.14 for the buyers, and here it's a bit less pronounced, right? 17 million, 13 million units. That's not so bad when you've got a buy order of 66 million units. So there's still this battle for 60 ISK happening. But with the average prices here, it does look like we have a decent amount of dumping to these buyers. If that keeps getting pushed even lower, at some point the sellers will croak as well. And we'll see Mexalon go below 60 ISK. I think, considering what's happening with titanium, that it might happen, which is not good news for miners, of course. Isogen continuing on that 1 year low point, continuing that that sideways streak at this current really low price, 16 ISK for the sellers, 15.9, so also 16 ISK for the buyers. And despite that, we still have hundreds of millions of units coming in for Isogen as well, which I think should mean that Noxium gets its back broken. It doesn't. All right, counter to my intuition, or what I expected. We have above 300 ISK, or just above that for the average daily prices, 307 for the sellers, 289 for the buyers. Right on the average, but considering where all the other minerals are at, I would say that Noxium might actually be okay to sell still. If you're looking for liquid ISK for your mining activities, probably look for some Noxium if you don't have the option for Zydrine, Megasite or anything like that, which we'll move to right now. Unfortunately, again, 1 year low point, a slow landing towards 400 ISK for Zydrine, 425 for the sellers, and 396 for the buyers. Here again, 10 million, that's a decent amount, but most of them are actually not that big in volumes in the last couple of days. That's pretty damn interesting, actually a bit surprising. And then to see that landing towards 400 ISK, but we're still a ways off from that on the average prices. So it's not like people are dumping on those buyers and driving those buy prices down. So I'm surprised. This is actually a decently large margin, not that much supply. I think that Zydrine is finding a bottom price and could actually go either way here. On some massive increase in production, we could see the bottom fall out, but on more hesitation, we might actually be finding a bottom and go back up a little bit. For Megasite, it's just more bad news. 1 year low point yet again, 456 for the sellers and 433 for the buyers. That's much less of a pronounced margin there, in my opinion. Yeah, maybe we're trying to defend 450, but I think that with 5 million, 3 million, another 10 million, these are more normal numbers here when it comes to volumes, that we're actually going to blow straight through 450 as well at this point. Yeah, mining is losing its efficiency just because, well, the ships have become that much more efficient, and so has Nullsec, more organized, more volumes, just more minerals across the game is putting the pressure on us. Here is more fight. Last week did look really interesting for some investments, and a couple of days ago it looks like the market's pulled the trigger on that at around 8,200 on average, 8,500 now for the sellers, 8,500 for the buyers as well. So a bit of buying, a bit of position taking in a more fight at very close to the 1 year low point. Absolutely a good idea, I think, to do so if you still had the opportunity. So that's it for minerals. The general trend obviously down in price quite a lot. Next up we have RPI at 1345. Like that, and we do now know that you need stuff like broadcast nodes and integrity response zones for the construction of the new structures, but you also don't need many of them. On the other hand, I do think that the Gnostic Alliances will build many of these structures. So let's see what's happening with the market here. And no, broadcast nodes breaking through the 2 million barrier without too much support, and at a 1 year low point. This is very surprising to me. 2 million for the sellers, 1.9 million for the buyers. Are we seeing some dumping of people that had expected more from these new structures that are coming with the winter expansion? I personally think then that if you can buy close to 1.9 million, look at the entire chart. This is a great buy opportunity, and you're taking a bit of a gamble that the market is wrong with what they're doing now, and that when the new structures actually do hit, that we will have that increased demand for some of these advanced PI materials. So very interesting, completely again counter to my own intuition and to what I was expecting. Broadcast nodes close to 1 year low points, buy orders at 1.9 million. That is very cheap. Construction blocks next. After trying to get back to 11,000 ISK or crushed back down towards 10,000 ISK, buyers are below that. Sellers at 10,400 or 350, something like that, is again really cheap at the moment, close to 1 year low point, definitely on the buyers. Consumer electronics is holding decently well at the average price, right? Average price is just continuously around 12,500 ISK. 12,400 for the sellers, 11,700 for the buyers. So sellers around average, buyers probably a touch below average, but definitely okay to sell. Fuel related PI, despite the fact that you may already have seen nitrogen fuel blocks dipping another 3.3% in the last week, is still holding at that 1 year high point, 11,000 ISK for coolants for the sellers, 10,500 for the buyers. A really good price, and I'm really personally very happy with that because it's so easy to produce. That is my passive income, and my thinking has always been fuels is consumed continuously throughout the game. So if you're looking for a more stable good to produce for PI, it would be fuel related items, and yeah, doing very strongly despite the lower prices for fuels themselves. Enriched uranium, same thing, working on even more strength, 1 year high point above 14,000. This is a bit more tricky to make. I think you need stuff like a plasma planet or lava planets in order to make enriched uranium on a single planet. You don't have that many choices, but yeah, we're running out. 14,500 for the sellers, 14,250 for the buyers. An incredibly nice opportunity to sell some enriched uranium. And look at the low point that we've seen, although it's almost a year ago, 9,000 ISK. That is a very nice markup and really good for producers. Integrity response drones, after a bit of a dip before, I think we knew what was going to be in the new structures, is basically back on the average of 2.5 million, 2.6 for the sellers and almost 2.5 for the buyers. Mechanical parts is for fuels. That one is hesitating a bit, but yeah, 12k, even historically speaking, was a really high price for mechanical parts because just like coolant, it's very easy to produce. So currently holding at 11,000 ISK is actually a really good price as well. 11,100 for the sellers, 10,750 for the buyers. Not bad at all for something that you're making on a barren planet. Nuclear reactors next. Oh, finally climbing up to above 1.1, 110,000 ISK. Are we? Well, nope, we're already being dragged back down by some sell orders at 110 and 102,000 ISK. Buyers staying below 100,000. This is basically not the volatility that we're looking for, because you can't really make good trades on these nuclear reactors. Look at the complete difference with last year, where you had some massive volatility and some nice bottoms to less than 90k and tops to 130,000 and even 150,000. This is completely changed, this nuclear reactor market, and it's known a far more stable year, which is basically a very slow burn up from 90,000 ISK to around 100,000 on average at the moment. Organic mortar applicators, after actually surging a little bit on finding out what happened with what was coming with the structures, is now back to around average. I would say 1.1 million for the sellers, 1 million for the buyers. Robotics next. Stemming the slow decline, so after reaching a top of 110,000 ISK, is now a little bit below 100,000 ISK, so that's actually still a bit below the previous prices, the prices before we got to new types of structures and things like that. So This one feels like it's not as strong as mechanical parts, as coolants. 98,600, 700 for the sellers, 95,500 for the buyers. It's a very narrow margin though, so very stable price, just below 100,000 ISK so far. Self-harmonizing power cores, you know, nothing too special. I mean, a bit of a bump up on finding out what's needed for structures, but 2.25 million for the sellers and 2.2 million for the buyers is definitely not crazy either. Superconductors up, all right, after actually dipping really low to 10,500 ISK, is now selling for 12,600. Buyers forced up as well with 11,700 ISK. A bit of a comeback here for the superconductors, now slightly above average, not by too much, but definitely in a good place to sell. Test cultures, that has known a nice comeback up to 9,000 ISK after reaching a bottom price of 7,000 ISK. Currently selling for 9,600 almost. That is not bad at all, I would say, for less than a month here. That's a nice motion up, which I think does find its origin in finding out what the new structures are going to take to make. So I'm not sure. Is it just that broadcast nodes are not really a part of these structures? And that's why they're so counter to most of the others that are at least a bit above average all of a sudden, with their mainframes, for instance, at 2.3 million for the sellers and almost 2.2 million for the buyers. I think it must be that broadcast nodes is either like a one-off in some of the structures or just not used as much as the other advanced PI materials. I would need to do more research, but this is definitely one that breaks the trend of being at least slightly above average for most of the other advanced PI materials. So if you know, definitely put that down in the comments. Are you still seeing buy opportunities here? I personally, well, the market seems to say that no, these new flex structures will not move the market too much. I personally think that there's still a very large part of the population and nothing that will not be prepared for this, and that we will still see an increase in price. But we'll see if I was right or wrong when that actually happens. Next up, advanced moon materials at 2115. Like that, and as always we'll start with the carbonite stuff. Yeah, bit of a move up here for crystalline carbonite that has basically stalled in the last week or so, so it's still below average. 177 for the sellers and 161 for the buyers, but it's not the bottom price for the year. That was at around 145 on the chart, so this is still below average, but not by that much anymore. Your buy opportunity is over, I think. Slow increase in price for ferrite carbide as well. After reaching 150, we now have buyers at 157 and sellers at 165, so again below average price, but not the bottom price anymore. Next up we have titanium carbide that also dipped to 150 and is now basically bouncing off of that price a little bit. 170 for the sellers, 167 for the buyers. And now we've got tungsten carbide that actually is playing with very close to bottom prices and going below 175, 172 for the sellers, 164 is for the buyers of tungsten carbide. I would say if you're looking for that buy opportunity, tungsten carbide might still be there. All the others are slowly making their way away from bottom prices, but are still staying well below average, so I would not sell anything that I've bought. On the metamaterials fronts, we've got photonic metamaterials that is also hesitating. You get average price all over the place a little bit after that decreasing price towards what I would call an average price range. Maybe a touch below that. You could call 20,000 the average. So a bit below that, but nothing too drastic here. 19,500 for the first seller. Most of them are actually edging towards 20k, and then 18,750 for the buyers. Below average, but not really a super pronounced bottom, I would say. Plasmonic metamaterials was doing the same thing and actually worked its way back up in the last couple of days to above 20k on average. 21,000 for the sellers, 20,500, so back just slightly above average here all of a sudden for the plasmonic metamaterials. Then we have non-linear metamaterials. 25,000 seems to be its average, so there's not much to say here. 26,700 for the sellers, 25,300 for the buyers. The average seems to be around 25,000. And then we've got terahertz metamaterials that after dipping to a bottom of 20,000 ISK bumped its way back up to 22,500, back to a slightly less than average range, I would say. 23,000 for the sellers, 22,500. So there's a bit of a stabilization in that market. The carbide ones are bouncing off of their bottoms, and as a result, the metamaterials are basically finding their average prices again. Looking to me, this is like, too late to buy, too early to sell, in my opinion. Next up, we have the other advanced moon materials. Here we have fermionic condensate that also, after having a couple of months of declining prices to maybe slightly below average prices, bumping back to probably around average or slightly above average. 100,000 pretty much for the sellers, 95,000 for the buyers. Right around the average of the chart. Not much to say. Ferrogel, a bit of hesitation as well after that really increasing velocity on the price decrease, dipping to less than average of 45,000 is basically bumped back up and is trying to again find that 45,000 mark, which I would call an average price. 46 for the sellers, 45 for the buyers. That's back on an average price. Fullerite is also now landing at a less than average price. But if we disregard this peak, basically, it's not by that much. 943 for the sellers, 902 for the buyers. That's, less than average, but is that a bottom price? You can see that below 875 has been possible, 850, something like that. And yeah, we're above 900 for the buyers. So I don't think so. Hypersynaptic fibers, again, same thing. Bit of hesitation here in September, but then we're basically landing right in the middle of the chart. There's really not that much to say. I'm quite surprised by that. I think it's the lack of actual NOSIC action that is driving this stability. And unfortunately for us, it does look like the sellers have become savvy, that they were pushing these carbide prices down so much that it was not helping them, and so they're holding off a little bit, and here everything is stabilizing, unfortunately not at bottom prices. Nanotransmitters, same thing here, around 5,000 is a bit above that, bit below that, but the volatility is obviously decreasing in these. Phenolic composites, I would still call that above average at the moment, with 2,900 for the sellers and 2,700 for the buyers. And then finally we have the ceramic fibers. That is interesting. Did just create basically a bottom at around 390. You can see the volumes here, a bit too late for the actual purchase, but you are still buying at less than 400 ISK, 408 for the buyers. And if you look at that entire chart, that is actually pretty low. So there's ceramic fiber, still looks pretty interesting for buying. Tungsten carbide perhaps as well, but all of the others are basically hovering around their averages a bit too much for me to say that we're going to make an investment there. Next up, we have the Tech 2 ships at 27 minutes. Like that. Yep, okay. And let's see what that stabilization of advanced moon materials does with the Tech 2 ship market. The Aries here, for instance, well, after a bit of volatility on the news that the other four interceptors would lose their nullification, is landing at around 30 million ISK, a bit less than that for the sellers, 27 million for the buyers, so slightly below average price for the year, but this is considering where advanced moon materials are at, right where we would expect that one to land. Basilisk, same thing, hovering at a slightly less than average price at the moment, currently selling for 234, but buyers at 216. That is pretty low. I do think that on some of these cruisers, like logistics cruisers, you have good buy opportunities here and there, but always be careful with the volumes. The Cerberus, after reaching a one-year low point of less than 200 million ISK, is finally breaking away from that. 229 million for the sellers and 213 for the buyers. That buy opportunity is over. We're still below average, right? 250 or above, that seems to be the average, but at least it's not by such a wide margin anymore. This feels more normal, against a bit of a settling of that Tech 2 market at the moment. The Crow showing that volatility, obviously that's the interceptor problem. This one is actually dipping pretty low, 28.8 million for the sellers and 25.8 for the buyers. Yeah, 25.8 is definitely at the low end of the chart here. Potentially on this volatility and these large volumes, you've got a slight buy opportunity for the Crow. The Guardian is at a 1-year low point, landing close to 200 million ISK, 210 for the sellers, 200 and a bit more than that for the buyers. If we lose these two buyers, I think we are obviously at the 1-year low point and you have a great buy opportunity. We're already really close to that though. So I would say, yeah, Guardian as well. Looking at this entire chart here, is in a very nice spot to try and grab a couple. Heretic also below average, not as pronounced a bottom. Buyers at 59 million though, less than 60 million. That is not bad. Hound climbing, all right, climbing after, well, in early October reaching a bottom of 25 million, which I would say is a trigger. That's a buy opportunity in most of these frigates, especially these stealth bombers, and is now selling for 38 million. That would have been a nice profit to take. Why? Not sure. Basically running out of hounds all of a sudden. The Ishtar heading again for a 1-year low point, 237 million for the sellers, 224 for the buyers. Then we've got the Manticore, stealth bombers taking up, taking off all of a sudden. So here again we played with 30 million for the Manticore for a little bit. Now 39.6 million for the sellers, still 30 million for the buyers. Though is the Hound margin also, yeah, up to 10 million ISK. So be careful, this might not last very long. The Munin landing at 250, so back in the meta, a bit more demand for the Munin, selling for 255, buyers at 233. Yeah, average price I would say. Nemesis stable at 30 million. That's unfortunate. I would love to see the Nemesis dip to 25. Grab a couple of those for the next stealth bomber volatility. The Oneros also landing at a 1-year low point, I would say. 178 for the sellers and 165 for the buyers, just like with the Guardian and the Basilisk. You know, a good buy order. Don't buy 20 of them, but here and there, buying one of these I think would make a lot of sense. The Purifier back above 30 million, so I don't like this chart too much. Saber also lower end of the average, but nothing too crazy. Scimitar, same thing, 230 million, and then the Stiletto is pretty average as well, heading for a low point. Well, 29 million for the buyers and 31 for the sellers. That's still a pretty narrow margin. You're a bit below average, but nothing too crazy. So the Tech 2 market is basically pretty stable at less than average prices, and here and there you can find some nice buy opportunities. And then surprisingly enough, the Hound and the Manticore, 2 stealth bombers that actually are peaking this week all of a sudden. But yeah, look at stuff like the Guardian, that looks pretty interesting. The Basilisk looks okay. The Ishtar maybe. And then which other one had we? Yeah, the Oneros is crazy low. Of course, the volumes are very low for this ship as well. So, but yeah, to me personally, the Guardian looks like one of the most interesting places for a buy opportunity in the Tech 2 ship market this week. And then next we have the Tech 3 market at 3205. Like that, I'm making good speed this week, I must say. As always, we'll start with the destroyers. Let's see what's happening here. Confessor taking off to more than 40 million ISK, selling for 46 million all of a sudden. Buyers are at 34.8 million ISK. Volumes here again, nothing too crazy. Pretty normal, 30, 10, 15, 30. So that looks quite okay. Yep, the market is back for these tactical destroyers. Your bottom price of around 30 million was your actual buy opportunity, and at this point that oversupply spectre has basically dried up, it's completely gone, and we have a resurgence in these ships. Currently, yeah, 46 million, definitely some profit taking that can be made here. Hecate went up to 45 million and is now working its way back here. The volumes might be interesting, and look at that, 163 just less than 24 hours ago. That's a bit more dangerous. It's still not 300, 400 that we've seen before, so I think that the decrease in price will stay muted. 43 million for the sellers, 40 million for the buyers. Your buy opportunities around 35 million to 36 million. So this one has always been a bit more tricky to make some nice profits, unlike the Confessor this week. And we're seeing a bit more supply come in all of a sudden, so we have to keep that in mind. The Jackdaw is also flat at 40 million ISK, and here the volumes, yeah, nothing too crazy. So 40 million for the sellers, 37 million for the buyers, and you did have some buy opportunities close to 30 million about a month ago. Then we still have the Zwepel as well, after dipping below 30 million, and I bought some at 29 million. They're currently selling for 37.5 million, and the buyers are coming in at 35 million. And I think if I... Oh, it's still in there. I think I sold for like 36 or something like that, taking like 10 million in profit, 10% on my investments, or something like that. I think it was. So for I'll have to check my main and see if I still have the Zwepels. If they're sold, they'll be gone from the ticker next time. And I did make some profit on that trade myself. Then we still have Tech3 ships. So that's the Zwepel. Bit of an increase in price, and the Confessor is now looking really good for a sale. I personally think that I still have 2 Confessors to sell myself. So I'll take that profit. Thank you very much. For the cruisers, we've got the Legion that after increasing price to 160 is already on its way back down. Volume wise, we're not seeing why, so it's just healthy market competition as far as I can tell. Supply coming in 169, coming in at 168, and all of a sudden 158, but it's only 10 of them, nothing too crazy. And then the competition starts from there. So the Legion is back down in price a little bit. The Loki is going up to 250 million, is apparently 237 though for the sellers. Now we've got more ships coming in, and 225 for the buyers. Still by far the most expensive cruiser. The Proteus working on a nice spike from 130 up to 194 million. I'm not sure if I caught this buy opportunity here. But I've always been a bit hesitant with the cruisers because it did feel like there's a lot of manipulation happening in that market by some rich parties. Still, this is really damn nice. Like probably a month ago, a bit less than that, you could have bought these for less than 130 million, and now they're selling for 194 million, and there's still volumes. This is definitely a nice sell opportunity for the Proteus all of a sudden. And then we've got the Tengu that after increasing price to 200 million is now landing back to the 175 million range here. So the Tech3 market, quite a bit of weird stuff happening. The big thing is volumes are not too crazy. Proteus here, look at that, nothing too crazy in volumes. Legion as well. The one exception is the Hecate that still has 163 here, and then here we do have that soft landing. We can see that pressure on the price right away, but lovely spike for the Confessor, marvelous spike for the Proteus. The Tengu is still holding decently well here, so, and then the Jackdaw is doing okay in my opinion. Tech3 ships are definitely up in price all of a sudden, and I think that what we have to keep in mind though is that I don't think those hundreds of ships have been destroyed. They're probably still around somewhere waiting to be sold at a better price. So try to snatch those sell opportunities, I would say, as long as we can grab them in these Tech3 ships. Next up, we have a couple of requests as the extra at 3710. I had a request for synthetic synapses and transcranial micro somethings. So let's go look for those. Synthetic, how are we gonna find them here? Probably in trade goods. No. All right, or is it like that then? Search, nothing found. Nope, that doesn't make sense. I think they're PI materials, planetary materials. Would they be refined? Do we have something like that? We've got synthetic oil. Why didn't it find that? What the hell? Or do we find something like that? Synthetic synapses. Finally found them. Ooh, very interesting chart indeed. Look at that volume increase and then a price spike to a 1-year high point, selling for 124 million. No, 100,000 ISK. Let's not go overboard. Selling for 124,000 ISK, and the bars are up to 114,000 ISK, and for the year this has usually cost less than 90,000 ISK. That's a very nice spike in the synthetic synapses with massive increased volumes, and this timing, I would say that is probably related to the new structures and to the PI materials that are basically required to go up to those advanced PI materials needed for them. So lots of synthetic synapses here all of a sudden. Then we also have the transcranial something. Let's see if we can find that. Transcranial search. Microcontrollers, same thing, really big volumes, except that that's like 10 days ago. A spike went up to also like 140,000 ISK, but it's already back down to 86,500, and the buyers are at 77,000 ISK. So this is specialized PI material that did go up in price. I think again on finding out on CC exactly what will be needed for these structures, which is always still a little bit of gambling, because you never know what CCP will actually do in the end. CC is just a test server. Everything there is subject to change, but we can see that in the transcranial microcontrollers that the supply came in very quickly to plug that gap, and that we're back to average prices already. And then just to end, I'll go over the investment. So full rights I bought for 839. They're currently selling for 942, and the bars are at 902. So I already have a nice profit. I must have bought on this dip here. All right. Not a bad purchase, but definitely too early to sell. Integrity response drones bought at 2.1 million would currently sell for 2.6 million. Here is where I have to take that gamble, right? Do I think that we'll see another spike when the winter patch actually comes out? I personally do think so. So I'm actually going to hold on to this a little bit longer as well, I think. Strontium, that is a very old investment of mine that I think I bought at around 2,300, but I think that's actually wrong. I think I bought them at even higher prices, and it's basically still declining. 1,800 now for the sellers, 1,600 for the buyers. 1 year low point for strontium. Glut rates, that is quite terrible. If you have strontium, if you're looking for that investment opportunity, this chart does look amazingly interesting, but when we'll see, you'll need a CCP intervention so that we can increase the strontium demand in the game. As I've said, Zwebel for 29, I think I sold them, I'm not exactly sure, and then I bought tungsten carbide at 178, and we have a second dip, so and that is actually a bad purchase of mine, because we're still well below that price point at the moment, which I think is in a buy opportunity, honestly, the tungsten carbide market. And those are the investments that I made. I grabbed nothing new last week, just I've been super busy, and I don't always have time to do everything that I should do when it comes to my investments, but I do my best. And that's going to be it for this week, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next time.